Okay, so good day class. Again, welcome to the video recorded discussion of module number 13 in the subject PS1, the child and adolescent learners and learning principles. So this will be the first module for the final period. Okay class, so for the module number 13, it includes also our chapter 13, which entitles Theories of Socio-Emotional Development. So there are three worldviews of personality development according to this module. So we have the organismic worldview, the mechanistic worldview, and the contextual worldview. So let's go first for the organismic worldview. So the organismic worldview likens human to plants and other living organisms. So in this view, human beings are organized wholes or systems. They cannot be understood piece by piece or behavior by behavior because they are greater than the sum of their parts. So in addition, humans are active in the developmental process. Forces springing from within themselves rather than environmental events are primarily responsible for their development. So how do you see yourself as a plant? Or do you see yourself as a plant? Can we compare a human being in a plant in terms of developmental process? So what aspects of your experiences do you see yourself grow from? So in the organismic worldview class, it simply pertains that um, we as a human is like a growing plant. So we start, as a human grows, parang sa plant din, sa plant is seed, di ba? When a plant grows, nauuna muna nating itatanim yung seeds nito. So, ganun din sa human class, we are formed then by the union of the egg cell and the sperm cell. So, just like what plants undergo kapag lumalaki ito, ganun din yung development natin as a human. And in this organismic worldview, it pertains to the as a whole. So, as a whole ng development ng isang person, na ibig sabihin, we cannot determine our piece by piece na development. Parang hindi pwedeng sabihin yung development ng brain itself, ng development ng physical aspect natin. Katulad din sa plant, hindi pwedeng sabihin na nag-grow lang yung leaves, na lumalaki lang yung mga branches, tapos meron itong sariling process ng pamumunga. So parang it goes with each other. Parang in order for the plant to bear fruits, 'di ba? Nag-undergo siya ng specific changes physically. So ganun din sa human. We as a human nag-undergo din ng physical changes for us to meet yung physical aspects natin regarding in one person. So parang ang sinasabi dito class is we cannot determine the development of a person ng piece by piece. As a whole, dapat tinitignan yung development ng human dito para makita natin kung papaano siya mag-grow hanggang sa siya ay tumanda. So, ganun din class, sa plants, ganun din, ino-observe din natin kung papaano ito lumaki, magbunga, at sa huli is papaano ito malalanta. And then eventually, mamamatay. Kasi ganun din yung tao class, kapag na-meet na rin natin yung the peak of our lives, is nagkakaroon din tayo ng death at the end. So, yun yung view ni organismic worldview. So, next is we have the mechanistic worldview. So, the mechanistic worldview likens human beings to machine. So, more specifically, this model assumes that humans, number one, are the collection of parts. So, for example, they can be analyzed behavior by behavior, much as machines can be taken apart by piece and piece. I mean, dito naman sa mechanistic worldview, parang nililink nila yung development ng isang person sa machine. So, unlike kay organismic worldview na ikinukumpara nila yung development ng person sa isang plant, kung papaano ito mag-grow, dito naman kay mechanistic worldview is humans are being compared into a machine na kung saan pwede nating ma-determine yung development ng isang person piece by piece. So, parang sa socio-emotional development niya, sa mental aspect development niya, sa physical aspect ng life niya into development, parang madidetermine what kind of a person yung tao na yun. So, it is the it is the viewpoint of the mechanistic worldview. So, number two here is mechanistic worldview are relatively passive in the developmental process, changing mainly in response to outside stimulation, so much as machines depend on outside energy sources to operate. So, in mechanistic worldview again, it talks din doon sa environmental ng isang human. Yung surroundings niya, it has definitely a big effect on the developmental process of a human. Unlike in organismic view na parang nakadepend lang siya doon sa sarili niya kung paano siya mag-grow. Kasi diba, there are some plants that hindi kailangan ng water to grow, na hindi kailangan ng inaalagaan, pero nabubuhay pa rin. Pero dito kay mechanistic, kinakailangan dito yung mga external sources para mabuhay yung isang human. So, that is again the main point of the mechanistic worldview. So, I hope naintindihan po ninyo yung differences nitong organismic and mechanistic worldview. So, change gradually or continuously as parts or specific behavior patterns are added or subtracted. And 4 can develop along a number of different paths depending on the environmental influences. So, yun nga po kanina, dito sa mechanistic worldview, the developmental process of a person can be influenced by his or her environment. So next, the last one is the contextual worldview. So the contextual worldview offers as a metaphor for human development. So an ongoing historical event or drama, an ever-changing interplay of forces. So the focus is on the dynamic relationship between person and environment. Humans are active in the developmental process, as in the organismic worldview, and the environment is active as well, as in the mechanistic worldview. So, the potential exists for both qualitative and quantitative change. In development can proceed along many different paths depending on the intricate interplay of internal and external influences. So, given the worldviews, dito muna tayo sa contextual worldview. So, si contextual worldview naman, class, is the combination of organismic and mechanistic worldview. So, it pertains to the both ng perspective sa human development. So, naniniwala siya na as a human, we grow or we develop like a plant, and also as a human, we grow and develop as a machines. So, parehas ditong pinaniniwalaan that there are some aspect in our organismic worldview that can help us to achieve our developmental process. So, ganun din sa mechanistic, meron din itong ang tawag na nito, environmental influences that can affect the developmental process of a human. So, Given the worldviews, a child's social and emotional development are explained through various theories. So a theory is a set of ideas proposed to describe and explain certain phenomena. Basically, a theory is a perspective of something. So a good theory should help us better describe, predict, and explain human development. So theories that fail to meet these evaluation criteria, theories that are not parsimonious, internally consistent, falsifiable, and supported, need to be revised or ultimately discarded altogether. So each theory makes a particular assumption of a statement about the nature of socio-emotional development. So we are talking, class, about the different theories of socio-emotional development. So on the following slide, we will discuss all about the different theories regarding the socio-emotional development. But these three worldviews, class, this is the foundation of the theories that we are going to discuss. So um, let's go for the next slide. Let's talk about the first theory of socio-emotional development. Okay, so class, let's go for socio-emotional development theories. So this is the first theory, Freud's psychoanalytic theory. So Sigmund Freud is the psychologist or the proponent of psychoanalytic theory. So Sigmund Freud is the most popular psychologist that studied the development of personality, also probably the most controversial theory. So his theory of psychosexual development includes 5 distinct stages. But before we go for that 5 stages, class, let us first discuss these 3 components of personality. So this is also according to Sigmund Freud. So we have the id, ego, and superego. So class, I know hindi na po ito bago sa inyo. Id, ego, and superego is um, the 3 components of personality or one's personality. So let's go for um, Freud's personality component. So Freud described the personality structures as having 3 components: the id, the ego, and the superego. So for each person, the first to emerge is the id, followed by the ego, and last to develop is the superego. So first, class, is the id. So Freud says that a child is born with the id. The id plays a vital role in one's personality because as a baby, it works so that the baby's essential needs are met. So the id operates on the pleasure principle. It focuses on immediate gratification or satisfaction of its needs. So whatever feels good now is what it will pursue with no consideration for the reality. Reality, logicality, and practicality of the situation. So for example, class, a baby is hungry. So its id wants food or milk. So the baby will cry. Kasi yun yung paraan niya ng pakikipag-communicate with the caregiver or whoever taking care of the child. So if the baby cries, it pertains to the hungriness na nararamdaman nung baby. So when the child needs to be changed, the id cries. Ganon din kapag uncomfortable si child or in pain or too hot, too cold, or whatever na pwedeng um, ma-feel nung baby, si id ang um, pleasure principle na nag-a-arise doon. The id speaks up until his or her needs are met. So, nothing else matters to the id except the satisfaction of its own needs. So, it is not oriented towards considering reality nor the needs of others. So just see how babies cry anytime of day and night. Absolutely no regard of whether mommy is tired or daddy is sleeping. When the id wants something, it wants it now, and it wants it fast. So, example na lang natin dito is yung mga baby class. 'Di ba? They cannot talk kung baby pa sila. So, the way of interaction of their parents is through crying or laughing, depending on the emotions that the babies feel, or the baby's feeling at that time. So, for example, kapag ka nagugutom yung bata, so ang personality na lumalabas doon ay si id. Kasi ang umiiral doon is yung gusto niya dapat makuha agad at meron agad. So, yun ang personality natin na id class. Example yun sa baby. Ganon din naman sa mga toddlers, ganon din sa mga grown-up child, sa middle adulthood, sa mga adulthood, sa late adulthood, ang tawag nito, lumalabas si id na personality natin kapag ka meron tayong gusto, tapos gusto nating makuha yun agad. So, sa kagustuhan nating makuha yun, we get it in any methods that we want to use, basta makuha lang yung mga bagay na gusto nating makuha. So, sabi nga dito, class, when the id wants something, it wants it now, and it wants it fast. So, parang yung isang tao, or hindi na nag-iisip kung yung paraan niya is tama or hindi. Basta kapag kasi id personality ang umiral sa atin, is hindi na tayo nagdo-double think kung ano yung mga consequences nung mga actions natin dahil sa kagustuhan nating makuha yung mga bagay na gusto nating i-achieve or makuha at that time. So, ganun din sa baby, ganun din sa mga class, sa emotional or socio-emotional ng mga bata. So, si pleasure principle is what we call the id. Mas lalo na yung mga baby class, hindi natin mapapatahimik yan kapag hindi na ibigay yung gusto. Ganun sa mga bata kasi, if what they want is not given, the tendency is mas lalong nagkakaroon sila ng bad behavior, mas lalong nagkakaroon sila ng bad feeling towards the caregiver kasi nga hindi na ibibigay yung gusto nila kaagad. So, next is, kaya siya tinawag na pleasure principle. Kasi it's all about our pleasure in our body, in our mind, and even in our emotional aspect. So, next is our ego. So, the ego operates using the reality principle. So, it is aware that the others also have needs to be met. It is practical because it knows that being impulsive or selfish can result to negative consequences later. So it reasons and considers the best response to the situations. As such, it is the deciding agent of the personality, although it functions to help the id meets its needs. So it always takes into account the reality of the situation. So, for example, class, as a baby turns into a toddler and then into a preschooler, he or she relates more with the environment. So, the ego slowly begin to emerge. So, si ego, class, ito na yung mas calm na personality po natin. Kasi, we think na the consequences of our actions in this personality. Unlike doon kay id, na kung ano yung gusto mo, is dapat makuha mo in any method that you want. Without thinking kung ano ang magiging consequences nito. Pero dito si ego class, ito yung parang nagbabalance sa personality natin. So, we are now thinking doon sa mga consequences, doon sa decisions that we are going to make. So, ganun din sa mga bata class. As the child grows older, yung ego niya, yung ego na personality niya is nade-develop na din. Kasi they can now realize that not all they want can give at that moment, or not all they want can give all the time. So, dito naiisip na nila na yung mga kagustuhan nila is pwedeng makuha nila pag mayroon silang actions na gagawin, o di kaya yung mga gusto nilang ma-achieve is dapat alam nila kung ano yung mga consequences doon sa decisions na gagawin nila. So, ganun din class sa mga adulthood, like we are, if we deal with our ego personality, this is the way, or this is the time we think with the consequences that the decisions we make in our life. So, hindi pwede, si ego, hindi pwede yung gusto niya makukuha niya. Hindi. Si ego, ito yung gusto niya, pero iniisip niya kung yung paraan na gagamitin niya para makuha niya yung gusto niya is maganda ba yung kakalabasan or hindi. So, yun yung maganda kay ego na principle. So, ito yung reality na principle na tinatawag. Yung tinitignan muna yung magiging consequences ng actions natin before we do or before we decide on the situation that we have. Okay, so next is the last component, yung superego. So, si superego, near the end of the preschool years or the end of the Palik Stage. So, the superego develops. The superego embodies a person's moral aspect. This develops from what the parents, the teachers, and other persons who exert influence impart to be a good or moral. So, the superego is likened to conscience because it exerts influence on what one considers right and wrong. So, si superego class, this is our sense of logical, practical, and real, and even our moral aspect in life. So, our superego personality knows what to be considered to be wrong or right na emotions po natin, not only the emotions, but decisions in our life. So, parang si superego class, it simply implies na siya yung konsensya natin. So, when we do bad things, ito yung nag-iisip, or ito yung parang biglang pumapasok sa isip natin na, oh, gagawin mo ba talaga yan? Anong mangyayari sa'yo pag yan ang ginawa mo? So, yung konsensya natin, class, pasok na pasok dito si superego. So, kung gagawa din naman tayo ng mabuti, ito yung tutulak sa atin na gawin yun. Kasi alam niyang maganda yung kakalabasan. Pero yun nga, kapag ka nagbabalak tayo ng bad towards other people, ito yung ang tawag nito, ito yung lumilitaw sa isipan po natin na pinipigilan ka kung ano man yung hindi ka nais-nais na pwede mong gawin sa isang tao, sa isang bagay, or sa isang desisyon na pwede nating gawin in our life. So, si superego nga is end na siya ng preschool years pagdating naman sa isang bata. Kasi syempre, kapag ka na-reach na nila yung 7 or 7, 8, 9, 10, is alam na rin nila what is right and wrong. So, they can now realize if they do bad things, meron na rin silang feelings or unwanted feelings kapag ka nag-iisip sila ng hindi magandang gawain. Ganon din naman kapag ka ang iniisip nila is yung magandang tawag na nito, magandang deeds in other people, nagkakaroon din sila ng excitement feeling doon. Kasi they are happy because they are doing good things in other people. So, ganun ang tawag na nito, ganun ang work ni superego in one's personality. Being our conscience and to decide, not to decide, but definitely, si superego, alam niya ang ating, kino-consider niya yung mga wrong and right doing ng isang person. So the three components and personality adjustments is the id, ego, and superego. So Freud said that a well-adjusted person is one who has a strong ego. So who can help satisfy the needs of the id without going against the superego, while maintaining the person's sense of what is logical, practical, and real. So of course, it is not easy for the ego to do all of that and strike a balance. If the id exerts too much power over the ego, the person becomes too impulsive and pleasure-seeking behavior takes over one's life. So the ego is empowered, the person becomes so harsh and judgmental to himself and others' actions. The person's best effort to good may still fall short of the superego's expectations. So yun nga class, these three personalities go for each other or help with each other. Kasi si id is may disadvantage and advantage din sa personality ng isang tao. Ganon din si ego, ganon din si superego. But they drive these three together. So, basta nandiyan si ego, we have a balance in our personality. Hindi naman pwedeng nasusobrahan si id, hindi rin pwedeng nasusobrahan si superego. Ganon din naman si ego. Pero si ego kasi class, it serves as the balance personality within or in one's person. So, kapag ka nasobrahan natin yung pagiging id na personality natin, the tendency is we become impulsive and pleasure-seeking. Kapag kasi superego naman class, we may become overpowered. Now, overpowered tayo, we became so harsh, now overpowered tayo kasi yung iniisip na lang natin is yung ang tawag na nito, yung mga possibilities when we take that action. Parang na-overthink din tayo minsan kapag ka si superego ang palaging umiiral as our personality. So, we must know as a ang tawag nito, not just as a child, but as a person, we must know when to take this personality. Kung kailan lalabas si id, kung kailan lalabas si ego, at kung kailan papairalin si superego. Okay, so for the psychosexual stages, according to Sigmund Freud, a person goes through a sequence of these 5 stages, and along the way, there are needs to be met. So whether these needs are met or not determines whether the person will develop a healthy personality or not. So the theory is quite interesting for many because Freud identified specific erogenous zones for each stage of development. So when we say erogenous zones class, these are specific pleasure areas that become focal points for the particular stage. So if needs are not met along the area, pag hindi nakamit yung needs or wants ng isang child in the area or in the stage, this is what we call the fixation. So as an adult, the person will now manifest behaviors related to this erogenous zone or our pleasure areas. So we have the 5 stages. We have oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital. So let's go for oral stage first. This is from birth to 18 months. So the pleasure areas in the oral stage is our mouth, or the mouth of the children or of a child. So during the oral stage, the child is focused on oral pleasures such as sucking. So too much or too little satisfaction can lead to an oral fixation activities. So this type of personality may be oral receptive, that is, have a strong tendency to smoke, drink alcohol, overeat, or oral aggressive, that is, with a tendency to bite his or her nails, or use curse words, or even gossips. So in oral stage class, yung pleasure areas ng bata dito is in his or her mouth. So as you can observe in the babies during birth up to 18 months, ang tendency is they do mouth sucking, thumb sucking. Thumb sucking pala is the right term of that. So kapag according to stages of oral stage of Sigmund Freud, it identifies the personality of that baby or of the child kapag ginagawa niya yung mga bagay na ito during oral stage. So kapag nagtatamsak madalas yung baby, ang oral receptive nun, paglaki niya, meron siyang personality or strong personality na mag-commit ng smoke, mag-drink ng alcohol, at mag-overeat. So, yun yung oral receptive niya. Pero in oral aggressive, ang tendency dito is to bite his or her nails. So, i-observe natin class, yung yung may mga kapatid kayong mga maliliit, baby pa, ganyan, tignan ninyo kapag nagtatamsak sila, and then i-observe ninyo yung personality nila as they grow old. So, we can see that there are some, things that they do that could lead in their personality as they grow old. Dahil nga sa pagtatamsak nila dito sa stage na ito. So, they can even curse paglaki nila or even gossip. So, yung mga mahilig manghalap ng information, magchismis, ganyan, nakikita na daw during baby pa lang sila. But this is a theory class. I am not saying na kapag nagtamsak yung mga baby, paglaki nila is chismosa sila agad. Hindi. Ano lang to class? It is according to Freud's theory. Kasi ang pinag-uusapan natin dito is yung socio-emotional development nila. So, pag yung personality nila is ganun nga, paglaki. So, there are some there are some components din na naka-affect doon. Not only the not only the pleasures in their mouth na ginagawa nila during this oral stage. These are the possibilities lang. Kaya nga tendency ang nakalagay po dito. So, as a result, these persons may become too dependent on others. They can easily be fooled and lack leadership traits. So, on the other hand, they may also fight these tendencies and become pessimistic and aggressive in relating with people. So, yun nga class, those are the tendencies na pwedeng maging personality ng isang tao kapag yun yung ginagawa niya during oral stage. So, next is anal stage. This is 18 months to 3 years old. So, the child's focus of pleasure in this stage is the anus. So, the child finds satisfaction in eliminating and retaining feces. So, through society's expectations, particularly the parents, the child needs to work on toilet training. So, let us remember that between 1.5 years to 3 years, the child's favorite word might be no. So, kapag tatanungin natin si child or yung mga bata, what, ang tawag na nito, if they want it, if they want to do it, ang tendency, the answer will be no. So, it is, ang tawag na nito, it is important for the parents to work din doon sa child, doon sa needs ng child, especially in this stage, yung anal stage po natin. Yung toilet training ng mga bata is very important at the early age of this stage. Kasi if we can train them in a right or proper toilet training, the tendency is magkakaroon sila ng anal retentive and anal expulsive. Kapag kayong proper na toilet training ng bata is na-develop na at the early age. So, yung sinasabi ko sa inyong anal retentive, ito yung magiging personality nila. Yung possible personality nila paglaki. So, when we say anal retentive, it is an obsession with cleanliness, perfection, and control. So, yung bata, paglaki niya, obsessed sa cleanliness. So, ayaw niya ng madumi, ayaw niya ng makalat, ayaw niya ng mabaho, ayaw niya ng messy place. Kasi nga, nung bata pa lang siya, na-train na siya doon sa toilet training na hindi maganda kapag madumi or dirty or ang tawag na nito, mabaho yung paligid niya. So, ang tendency, paglaki niya, ang tawag na nito, obsessed siya sa cleanliness. Ayaw niya ng madumi. Ganon din sa magiging perfection and control. So, gusto niya palaging perfect. Ayaw niya ng nagkakamali. So, those are the possible personalities of a child kapag meron siyang proper toilet training. And when we say anal expulsive naman, this is where the person may become messy and disorganized. So, kapag kayong child at the very young age ay hindi pa natuto sa tamang toilet training, ang tendency, paglaki, nagiging disorganized person siya. So, hindi makalat sa kwarto, makalat ang gamit, makalat ang mga damit. O, diba? So, parang, in this area, parang nare-realize din natin kung noong bata ba tayo, natuto tayo ng proper toilet training. Kasi we can see, or we can, ang tawag na nito, we can see din also kasi ito in one's personality. So, if our parents teach or taught us in our early age to have a right toilet training, so ang tendency is we are organized person. But if we are not, hindi tayo na-train ng maaga on toilet training, ang tendency is we are disorganized and messy person. But class, again, this is theories, ha? So, it is not really implied in a person-to-person or in all person. So, these are the tendencies lang naman. These are the probable personalities we can get in these stages. So, yun class, in anal stage, we have the anal retentive. Anal retentive, ito yung magandang magandang pag-uugali na madidevelop in this stage. And when we say anal expulsive naman, ito yung hindi maganda. Okay, next is our Palik Stage. So, this is ages from 3 to 6 stage. So, the pleasure or erogenous zone is the genitals. So, during the preschool age, children become interested in what makes boys and girls different. So, preschoolers will sometimes be seen funding their genitals. So, in phallic stage class, this is where the child being aware on the genital factor. Parang aware na siya if he or she is a boy or a girl. And Freud's studies led him to believe that during this stage, boys develop unconscious sexual desire for their mother. So, in this stage class, dahil nga nadidetermine na nila kung babae or lalaki sila, nagkakaroon sila ngayon ng, ang tawag na doon, nagkakaroon sila ng a sexual desire with opposite sex. So, example is boys then see the example ni Freud dito is yung boys develop unconscious sexual desire for their mother. So boys then see their father as a rival for her mother's affection. So kapag pagka boy yung bata, yung anak nila, ang tendency is magkakaroon siya ng jealousy na mararamdaman towards his father. Mas lalo na kapag nakikita niya si mommy and daddy na sweet, na hugging each other, ang tendency niyan is magkakaroon ng jealous effect doon sa batang lalaki. Kasi nga, na-develop na dito yung genital aspect ng ang tawag na nito, personality nila. So, nadidetermine nila that male sila, boy sila, and then nagkakaroon sila ng sexual desire towards opposite sex. So, boys may fear that their father will punish them for this feeling. Thus, the castration anxiety ang tawag doon kapag nare-realize nung batang lalaki na kapag nalaman ni father niya yun, is pwede siyang i-punish. Kasi ang tawag na nito, yung feelings dapat na mararamdaman ng batang lalaki toward his mother is yung motherly feeling, yung relationship between the mother and the son. Yun dapat yung madidevelop doon. But not sexual desire. Kasi hindi naman talaga dapat yun yung nadidevelop during this stage. So, this feeling comprised what Freud called Oedipus complex. So, kapag yung batang lalaki is nagkakaroon ng sexual desire doon sa mommy niya, ang tawag doon, Oedipus complex. So, in Greek mythology, parang doon sa Greek mythology natin, kasi if you read na si Oedipus unintentionally killed his father and married his mother, Jocasta. So, yung kwento kasi doon, class, si Oedipus na in love siya kay mami niya. So, yung pagkakaroon niya ng extreme sexual desire doon sa mami niya, nag-lead para patayin niya yung sarili niyang daddy. Kasi ang naisip niya doon, kalaban niya si daddy niya doon sa attention ni mami niya. So, we as a parents, kung may you as a future parents din, class, we need to emphasize doon sa mga anak po natin what really our relationship with them. So, iba yung relationship natin sa kanila as our daughter and son, and iba rin yung relationship natin sa daddy nila, which is their father. So, dapat na i-imply yon at the very early age para maiwasan natin yung mga ganitong scenario. Kasi hindi maganda kapag yun yung naiisip nung mga bata kapag habang bata pa lang sila. Ganon din naman kapag sa mga babae class. Psychoanalysts also believe that girls may also have a similar experience. So, not only with the sons' feelings with their mother. Ganon din sa girls. So, they have a similar experience also, developing unconscious sexual attraction toward their father. So, this is what is referred to as Electra complex. So, kapag ang tendency naman is yung anak na babae ang nagkakaroon ng sexual desire towards her father, ang tawag doon is Electra complex. So, yun yung sabi ko nga kanina class, at the very early age of the child, dapat na i-emphasize na yung So, yun nga class, sabi ko sa inyo kanina, it is very important that at the very early age of a child, yung relationship natin with them ay nadidetermine na at nai-explain ng maayos to avoid these complexes na pwedeng ma-encounter. So again, if the son develop a sexual desire towards his mother, ang tawag doon, Oedipus complex. Kapag kasi daughter naman, ang nagkaroon ng sexual desire toward her father, ang tawag doon, Electra complex. So this is again covered with the Palik Stage. So next is Latency Stage. So age 6 to puberty. So, it's during this stage that sexual urges remain repressed. So, the children focus is the acquisition of physical and academic skills. So, boys usually relate more with boys and girls with girls during this stage. So, in latency stage class, dahil aware na yung mga bata dito, what are their, what are their sex types, if there are female or if there are male, syempre nagkakaroon na rin sila ng parang girl thing and then boys thing. So, ang tendency kapag babae, ang palagi niyang kasama, mga babae din. And then kapag ka-boy siya, ang palagi niyang kasama or ang group na sasamahan niya ay boys. So, ang acquisition din dito is yung physical and academic skills, doon na nakafocus yung mga bata. Next is the last stage will be the genital stage. It is puberty onwards. So the fifth stage of psychosexual development begins at the start of puberty when sexual urges are once again awakened. So, in the earlier stages, adolescents focus their sexual urges toward the opposite sex peers with the pleasure centered of the genitals. So, in genital stage class, awaken na naman dito yung sexual urges nila. But, hindi na towards their parents. But, nade-develop na dito yung sexual urges nila with their opposite sex peers. So, yung boys, nagkakaroon na ng feeling towards sa girl, and then yung girl, ganun din, nagkakaroon na rin ng, ang tawag na nito, emotional feelings sa boys. So, syempre, yung age nila dito, class, is puberty onwards na. So, nagkakaroon na rin sila dyan ng different emotional feelings na pwede nilang ma-feel towards their peers, towards other people. So, not only with the family members na lang, not with the relatives, but also nagkakaroon na rin sila ng emotional feelings with other people. Especially doon sa mga peers na kasama nila palagi. So, nagkakaroon na sila ng crush dito sa stage na ito. Some may develop emotional feelings towards opposite sex, kaya nagkakaroon na sila ng boyfriends and girlfriends na tinatawag. So these are the 5 psychosexual stages according to Sigmund Freud. So this is the oral, we have the oral stage, anal, phallic, latency, and genital stage. Okay, class. So for the next socio-emotional development theories is the theory of Ericsson, Psychosocial Theory of Development. But before we discuss the theory of Ericsson, let us know first who is this psychologist. So Ericsson first published his 8-stage theory of human development in his 1950 book, Childhood and Society. So the stages were included in the chapter entitled The 8 Ages of Man. So he expanded and refined his theory in later books and revisions, mainly Identity and the Life Cycle in the year 1959, Insight and Responsibility 1964, The Life Cycle Completed, a Review 1982, and then the book has been revised in 1996 by Johan Ericsson, and Vital Involvement in Old Age 1989. So Johan Ericsson expounded on a 9th stage after Eric's death. This is found in her 1996 revisions to the Life Cycle Completed. So this is a review on the books that Ericsson has been published. So Ericsson studied with Freud's, so si Sigmund Freud daughters Anna, um, and emigrated from Germany to the United States with Hitler rose to power. So like Freud, Ericsson concerned himself with the inner dynamics of personality and proposed that the personality evolves through systematic stages. So Ericsson's points of view differed from Freud's in the following ways. So, first one, Ericsson placed less emphasis on sexual urges as the drivers of development and more emphasis on social influence such as peers, teachers, schools, and the broader culture. So, yun yung isang pagkakaiba ng theory ni Sigmund Freud and Ericsson. Si Sigmund Freud kasi nakafocus siya sa mga sexual urges or sexual drives ng isang person in the emotional development. Pero dito kay Ericsson, nakafocus siya sa mga social influence like in our peers, like in our teachers, schools, and the people that surrounds a person. So there are 4 identity status according to Ericsson. So these 4 stages, Ericsson believed that human beings everywhere face 8 major psychosocial crises or conflicts during their lives. So whether the conflict of a particular stage is successfully resolved or not, the individual is pushed by both biological maturation and social demands into the next stage. However, the unsuccessful resolution of a conflict will influence how subsequent stages play out. So, there are 8 psychosocial crises dito sa theory ni Ericsson. But before we go to that 8 psychosocial crisis stage class is we discuss first yung 4 identity status na sinasabi po dito. So, in table 13.3, as shown in your module, it is the 4 identity status as shown by current religious belief. So, meron itong 2 level which is no commitment made and then commitment made. So, these are the 2 levels which pertains to the achievement of a person. So, kung na-achieve niya, ibig sabihin, meron itong commitment. Kung hindi niya na-achieve iyon, pagdating ng araw, doon sa mga stages ng psychosocial development ni Ericsson, magkakaroon siya ng no commitment at all. So, meron din tayong no crisis experience and then crisis experience. So, when we say no crisis experience class, ibig sabihin, hindi niya ito na-experience all throughout his or her life. So, kapag ka-crisis experience naman, ibig sabihin, as the human grows older, doon sa mga stages na pagdadaanan niya, ay meron siyang mga crisis in life na na-experience. So, first one is doon tayo sa no commitment made, yung walang, tawag na nito, walang I mean, walang na-achieve at the end of his or her life. So, first is the diffusion status. So, the person has not yet thought about or resolved identity issues and has failed to chart directions in life. So, the example here is, I haven't really thought much about religion, and I guess I don't know what to believe exactly. So, in this diffusion status class, from the word itself po, a person has a, anong tawag na nito? Diffusion, yung kalituhan po na nangyayari. Kasi there are certain things in our life that we cannot decide na agad-agad. Parang we are confused yun. That is the right term. We are confused in the world around us. Kaya ang effect noon is we cannot decide what we like to do in our life, or kung ano yung mga paniniwalaan po natin in our lives. So, kapag ka sa moratorium status naman, the individual is currently experiencing an identity crisis and is actively raising questions and seeking answer. So, for example, I'm in the middle of evaluating my beliefs and hope that I'll be able to figure out what's right for me. So, I like many of the answers provided by my Catholic upbringing, but I've also become skeptical about some teachings and have been looking into Buddhism to see if it might help me answer my questions. So, don't confuse yourself, class. Ang pinag-uusapan kasi natin dito is yung religious belief ng isang person. So, in diffusion status, nagkakaroon siya ng confusion kung ano ang papaniwalaan niyang religion. But in moratorium status class, nagsisik na siya ng mga questions and answers doon sa mga questions niya, doon sa mga probable question niya, ano ba talaga ang pwedeng maging religion niya, ano yung papaniwalaan niya, ano yung mga custom and beliefs na isa sa buhay niya when we talk about religion. So, dito class, parang nagkakaroon na siya ng anong tawag na doon? Nagkakandak na siya ng sarili niyang research on what will be the decision the person will make regarding his or her religious status. So, next is yung foreclosure status. So, when we say foreclosure status, the individual seems to know who he or she is, but has latched to an identity prematurely, without much thought. So, for example, by uncritically becoming what parents or authority figures suggest he or she should. So, for example, my parents are Baptist, and I am Baptist. It's just the way I grew up. So, in foreclosure status class, parang there are no hesitation at all in this stage. Parang if the parents thought their children what religion to be what will be their religion to believe for, to join for, and then to to adapt kung ano yung religion ng parents nila, is nagkakaroon din ng closure sa part ng bata na kung saan, ay ito yung religion ng parents ko, ito na rin yung magiging religion ko. So, parang as the child grows older, tapos sumasama siya sa mga religious concerns ng parents, parang habang tumatanda yung bata na yun, nagkakaroon na rin siya ng idea on what is the religious belief of his or her parents. And ang tendency is na-adapt natin kung ano na yung pinaniniwalaan ng parents po natin. But in some areas or in some person class, there are changes that will happen. So, pagdating na nila ng adolescent, pag na-meet na nila yung right age nila, where they can choose their religion na gusto nila, yun, nagkakaroon ng changes doon. Pero kapag pagka nagkakaroon tayo ng foreclosure status, yung na mga achievement natin is nandoon na. So yun, parang contented na tayo kung ano yung religion na meron tayo. Magmula pagkabata hanggang sa tayo ay tumanda. Next is identity achievement status. So, the individual has resolved his or her identity crisis and made commitments to particular goals, beliefs, and values. So, and here class, the example is, I really did some soul searching about my religion and other religions too, and finally know what I believe and what I don't. So, identity achievement status class, it talks about the commitments of a person, kung gaano siya ka-commit doon sa religion na pinaniniwalaan niya. Siyempre, kung committed na ang person na yun sa religion na pinaniniwalaan niya, magkakaroon siya ng soul searching, magkakaroon siya ng magkakaroon siya ng research regarding other religions, kung ano ang maganda sa religion nila na hindi maganda sa iba, kung ano yung maganda sa religion ng iba na hindi rin maganda sa religion nila. So, kapag research na niya yun lahat, na-realize na niya kung ano talaga ang gusto niya, there will be the time that yung decision niya regarding the religion that he will be joining, or kung ano yung religion niya hanggang sa siya ay tumanda na, magkakaroon na ng period doon. So, kapag naniwala na siya doon sa religion na kinabibilangan niya, and contented na siya doon sa religion na pinaniniwalaan niya, nagkakaroon tayo ngayon ng identity achievement. Kasi minsan, si religion, nagkakaroon din siya ng effect on a person's identity. Kaya yun yung example in your module, and yung in-explain ko rin sa inyo. Kasi syempre, yung religious aspect natin in life, what we believe for, can affect really our personal development. So, kapag yung sinamahan nating religion is very positive ang impact nito sa atin, at talagang yung belief mo is very high doon sa religion kung saan ka nabibilang, ganun din yung personality natin, class. Most especially in our socio-emotional development, magkakaroon yun ng high positive effect in a one's person. Kasi makikita mo rin naman, class, if a person has a good or not so good na religion na kinabibilangan. Although we cannot judge the beliefs of other people, but we can we can imply kung anong klaseng tao siya, depending on the religion, or wag ng religion, class, depending on the beliefs na pinaniniwalaan po niya. So, these are the 4 identity status according to Ericsson. So, for the next slide, class, it will be the 8, yung 8 na psychosocial crisis stages ng psychosocial development theory ni Ericsson. So, the stages of psychosocial development, this is according to, this theory is proposed by Ericsson. So, Ericsson was a German-American psychologist who, together with his wife, Joanne, became known for his work on psychosocial development. So he was influenced by Sigmund and Anna Freud and became famous for coining the phrase identity crisis. So although Ericsson lacked even a bachelor's degree, he served as a professor at Harvard and Yale. So for the stages of psychosocial development class, Ericsson's theory of psychosocial development identifies 8 stages which a healthy individual should pass through from birth to death. So at each stage, we encounter different needs, ask new questions, and meet people who influence our behavior and learning. So for the first stage class is the trust versus mistrust, or the basic trust versus mistrust. So this is between infancy period 1 to 2 years old. So as infants, we enter the first stage that Ericsson called basic trust versus mistrust. So we ask ourselves if we can trust the world and we wonder if it is safe. We learn that if we can trust someone now, we can also trust others in the future. If we experience fear, we develop doubt and mistrust. The key to our development in this stage is our mother. So in this first stage class, it is very important that the relationship of baby in the mother is, ang tawag na nun, the relationship between the mother and the baby is always intact para yung trust ni baby sa surrounding niya or sa world na meron siya, ang magiging feeling niya is safe siya. Kaya ang key for the development of the baby in this period is yung care and love ng kanyang mother. Kasi si mother ang immediate na caregiver ni baby. So, siya yung pinaka-importanteng tao dito sa stage na ito. For the baby to develop trust sa kanyang sarili at sa tao sa paligid niya. Next, stage 2 is autonomy versus shame and doubt. So, this is early childhood from 2 to 4 years old. So, in our early childhood, we experience ourselves and discover our body. In this second stage, we learn to alter between autonomy versus shame and doubt. We ask, is it okay to be me? If we are allowed to discover ourselves, then we develop self-confidence. If we are not, we can develop shame and self-doubt. So both parents now play a major role. So in this stage class, it is very important that the child has a confident to develop a ang tawag na nito, to develop herself or himself. So, both parents now play a major role in this stage para alam nung bata or nung toddler kung ano yung gender preference niya, kung ano yung mga ginagawa ng boys, at kung ano yung mga ginagawa ng girls, kung paano sila i-differentiate with each other. So, kapag nagkaroon ng magandang development dito, ang na-achieve is autonomy. Pero kapag hindi yun na-imply or naituro ng parents at the early age, nagkakaroon sila ngayon ng low self-confidence at nagkakaroon din sila ng shame and doubt sa sarili nila. Parang hindi nila alam kung sino sila in this stage kung hindi naituro ng parents yung pagkakaiba ng mga gender pagdating nila sa stage na ito. So, next is initiative versus guilt. So, this is from preschool age. So, 4 to 5 years old. So in the following third stage, we learn about initiative versus guilt. So in preschool, we take initiative, try out new things, and learn basic principles like how round things roll. So we ask, is it okay for me to do what I do? So if we are encouraged, we can follow our interest. If we are held back or told that we do is silly, we can develop guilt. We are now learning from the entire family. So the role of the entire family in the third stage is very important din. Kasi mabibuild yung initiative ni child dito kapag alam niya na yung ginagawa niya is okay. Yung outcome is positive. Pero kapag yung ginagawa niya or sinabihan siya nung parents niya na hindi, ang tawag nito, hindi maganda yung kakalabasan nung mga activities na gagawin niya, ang madidevelop doon is guilt. So, initiative then is learn from our preschool years. So, as we observe or as you observe yung mga preschool kids natin, they try out new things on their own. So, doon nadidevelop din yung initiative nila. Pag hindi na-develop sa initiative class at the early age, ang kapalit nun is guilt. So, palagi nilang iisipin na parang yung mga ginagawa nila is magkakaroon ng negative outcome. Next is industry versus inferiority. So, this is school age from 5 to 12 years old. So, in the fourth stage, we explore industry versus inferiority. So, now, we discover our own interests and realize that we are different from others. We want to show that we can do things right. So we ask if we can make it in this world. So if we receive recognition from our teachers or peers, we become industrious, which is another word for hardworking. If we get too much negative feedback, we start to feel inferior and loss of motivation. So our neighbors and schools now influence us the most. So in this stage class, the people that surrounds you outside your home or outside your house will have a important role in this stage. So kung ano yung mga naririnig natin sa labas, kung ano yung sinasabi nila tungkol sa'yo, nagkakaroon yun ng influence sa socio-emotional development ng isang bata. So kapag puro negative feedback yung naririnig niya, hindi lang sa loob ng bahay, kundi sa labas ng bahay, ang tendency, nagkakaroon siya ng loss of motivation. Mababa yung self-confidence niya. At ang kalalabasan noon, inferiority, yung madidevelop sa kanya. Pero kapag nakaka-receive siya ng recognition, sinasabihan siya ng mga positive feedback, meron siyang mga friends that he or she can rely on, ang nadidevelop doon is industrious or yung hardworking na tinatawag po natin. So, it is very important doon sa mga tao na makakasalamuhan ng bata dito sa stage na ito. Not only the people na kasama niya sa loob ng bahay, as at the same time, nakaka-apekto din yung mga kasama niya or nakakasama niya outside their home. So, next is identity versus role confusion. So, this is during the adolescence period from 13 to 19 years old. So, during adolescence, we enter the fifth stage in which we explore the complexity or identity versus role confusion. So, we learn that we have different social roles. We are friends, students, children, and citizens. Many experience an identity crisis. If our parents now allow us to go out and explore, we can find identity. If they push us to conform to their views, we can face role confusion and feel lost. The key to our learning is our peers and our role models. So in identity versus role confusion class, this happens during our adolescence period. So how can we determine kung ano yung identity natin as a person? If we are peer, if we are a ang tawag na nito, if we are students, if we are friends, if we are children and citizens, papaano natin na-identify yung sarili natin between those choices na given. So, if our parents give us the opportunity to explore outside, magkakaroon tayo ng identity in our own. Parang makikita mo doon kung ano yung, kung sino ka bilang isang tao. Pero kapag ka nagkaroon ng hindrance, yung explore mo sa sarili, yung pag-explore mo sa sarili mo, ang tendency nun is nako-confuse ka kung ano ang role mo sa society. So, feeling mo nawawala ka, feeling mo hindi ka kasama, feeling mo wala kang kaibigan kasi ang nangyayari, parang nakukulong ka lang sa loob. Sa loob ng bahay nyo, sa loob ng mga, ang tawag nito, sa loob mismo ng sarili mo. Kasi hindi mo ma-identify kung ano talaga yung role mo as a person. So, it is important that hindi lang yung parents ang nagtuturo doon sa bata kung ano ang role niya sa mundong ito. Mas maganda rin kung lumalabas yung bata, nag-i-explore siya para mas ma-identify niya kung sino talaga siya. Para maiwasan yung role confusion na tinatawag. So, next is intimacy versus isolation. So, this is during early adulthood from 20 to 40 years old. So, as young adults, now in our 6th stage, we turn our focus to understanding intimacy versus isolation. So, we slowly understand who we are and we start to let go of the relationship we had built earlier in order to fit in. So, we ask ourselves if we can love, if we can make a long-term commitment, we are confident and happy. If we cannot form intimate relationship, we might end up feeling isolated and lonely. Our friends and partners are now the central to our development. So, in the 6th stage class is the early adulthood of a person. So, ang pinakamagandang key in our development here is our partners. So, if we have loved ones, if we, if we have a intimate relationship with other people or towards other people, yung nade-develop dito is yung intimacy po natin. Kaya nagkakaroon tayo ng confident and happy na feeling. Kung meron tayong relationship with other people. Kasi tinatanong mo dito if you can love another person or kung pwede tayong mag-form ng relationship with other people. Na pwede naman in this stage kasi we are at the right age na. So, yung early adulthood natin, dito na rin tayo pumapasok sa, marriage life. Kasi this is between 20 to 40 years. So, yung development mo na dito is nakasalalay na sa partner mo in life. Hindi lang sa wife, hindi lang sa husband, kung meron silang boyfriend and girlfriends, yun. Sila yung may pinaka-importanting role dito in a development of a person. Kapag hindi naman tayo naka-form ng mga ganong intimate relationship, ang tendency is na-isolate tayo. So, hindi tayo masaya. Ang feeling natin is lonely. Kasi nakikita mo yung mga tao sa paligid mo, they are happy, they have formed their family, they have a children to take care of. So, kapag mag-isa na lang tayo, yun, ang tendency is na-isolate yung self natin. Feeling mo ikaw lang, feeling mo mag-isa ka lang. Next is generativity versus stagnation or self-absorption. So when we reach this is during our adulthood from 40 to 65 years old. So when we reach our 40s, we become comfortable, use our leisure time creatively, and maybe begin contributing to society. So the seventh stage determines our generativity versus self-absorption or stagnation. So our concern is generativity. If we think that we are able to lead the next generation into this world, we are happy. If we did not resolve some conflicts earlier, we can become pessimistic and experience stagnation. So people at home and at work are now who influence us the most. So in this stage class, our concern na is if we are able to lead the next generation. Parang if we have a good deeds in our childhood lives, in our early adulthood lives, nagkakaroon tayo ng generativity. Parang feeling natin maganda yung maipapasa natin sa next generation. Kasi maganda yung development mo as a person. Pero kapag feeling natin hindi natin na-meet yung generativity, ang kapalit nun is stagnation. Nagkakaroon tayo dito ng pessimistic na attitude. And then yung people na kasama natin sa work at sa bahay is the most influential person in this stage. Okay, next and the last stage will be ego integrity versus despair. So this is during our maturity, 65 years old up to death. So in the final stage, the 8th stage, we face ego integrity versus despair. So as we grow older, we tend to slow down and begin to look back over our lives, which is true class. Diba sa mga matatanda, napapansin natin na palagi nilang kinikwento yung kabataan nila, noong bata sila, nung mga dalaga at binata sila, kung ano yung mga nangyari sa buhay nila. So they are looking back over their lives before, nung bata pa sila. So we ask, how have I done? If we think we did well, we develop feelings of contentment and integrity. So, yun yung nade-develop class kapag ka naglo-look back tayo, kapag ka na-reach natin na yung edad na ito, tapos feeling mo, nakamit mo lahat ng gusto mo, na-achieve mo lahat ng gusto mo, naging mabuti kang tao, ang nade-develop doon is integrity. So, parang nagkakaroon tayo ng feeling na kontento na tayo in our lives, na meron tayo sa, or na kontento tayo sa lives na na-meet natin or na-attain natin. So, kapag hindi tayo nagkaroon ng contentment na feeling, the tendency is we can experience despair and become grumpy and bitter. So, kapag nakakakita tayo ng mga matatanda na bitter in their lives, yung palaging galit, palaging hindi nakakausap ng maayos, ang tawag nito, nagkakaroon tayo ng idea na hindi sila kontento sa buhay nila ngayong matanda na sila. Kasi ang problema doon, yung mga gusto nila noong sila ay bata pa, maybe they did not achieve all of those. Kaya pagdating nila sa maturity age nila, hindi sila kontento. I mean, yung contentment na hinahanap nila is hindi nila ma-achieve. And they are grumpy, they are bitter in their life, and then time to compare us with mankind. Parang they keep on comparing with other people their lives. So, parang kung yung iba masaya, kino-compare nila yung sarili nila, but hindi ako masaya? Parang matanda na ako. Parang malapit na akong mamatay. Pero bakit yung andito pa rin yung feeling na hindi ako masaya? Yung hindi ako kontento. Kasi nga class, ang nangyari ay hindi niya nakamit yung mga gusto niyang ma-achieve nung siya ay bata pa. nung siya ay dalaga, nung siya ay binata, nung siya ay may asawa, nung siya ay may, ang tawag na dito, nung siya ay meron pang kakayahan para mag-work. So, doon natin makikita class sa mga elders po natin, kung happy sila, we can conclude that all their achievements in life have met. Pero kapag if they are bitter, if they are lonely, yun, pwede nating i-conclude na baka meron silang mga hindi nagawa nung sila ay nasa childhood years pa nila or habang sila ay tumatanda. So those are the 8 stages class of psychosocial development according to Ericsson's Psychosocial Development Theory. Okay, class, for this slide will be the learning theories in social and emotional development. So we have 3 theory, Watson behaviorism, Skinner's operant conditioning, and Bandura's social learning theory. So first, let's talk about Watson's behaviorism. So a basic premise of Watson behaviorism is that conclusions about human development and functioning should be based on observation of overt behavior rather than on speculations about unconscious motives or cognitive processes that remain unobservable. Moreover, according to Watson, learned associations between external stimuli and observable responses are building blocks of human development. So, like John Locke, Watson believed that the infant is a tabula rasa to be written on by experience. So, in Watson's behaviorism class, the main point here is the observation. So, observation of a child as he or she grows. During this social and emotional development class, according to Watson, nagkakaroon ng malaking impact dito yung observation na ginagawa ng parents doon sa mga children po nila. So, parang sa pinaniniwalaan din ni John Locke na infants is a tabula rasa, na walang, ang tawag nito, that has a blank sheet, and kailangan doon sa blank sheet na yon is nagkakaroon ng information yon as the child grows old. So those anong tawag na yun? Those those information that will be taken in his or her tabula rasa will be will have an effect doon sa doon sa environment ng child. So parang children have no inborn tendencies according to Watson. How they turn out will depend entirely on environment in which they grow up and the ways in which their parents and other significant people in their lives treat them. So Watson believed that the person around a child has a gradually impact in the development of a child. So, parang kung sino yung nakakasama niya sa paligid niya, magkakaroon yun ng impact regarding the social and emotional development niya. So, parang ang kapagkakapareho din dito sa theory ni Watson is yung theory din ni Yuri Bronfenbrenner, na kung saan merong stages or merong layer doon sa paligid ng child kung ano yung mga kung sino yung mga person na pwedeng maka-affect doon sa development ng isang bata. So according to behavioral perspective, then it is a mistake to assume that children advance through a series of distinct stages partly programmed by a biological maturation, as Freud, Ericsson, and others have argued. So, yung Watson behaviorism dito is taliwas doon sa paniniwala ni Sigmund Freud, ni Ericsson, ni Ericsson at ng iba pang mga psychologists na sinasabing meron ng ability ang isang infant pag silang pa lang niya sa mundo. So, instead, development is viewed as nothing more than learning. It is a continuous process of behavior change that is particularly and can differ enormously from person to person. So, Watson's basic view was advanced by influential work of B.F. Skinner. So, yung theory ni Watson's regarding behaviorism is much more alike doon sa theory ni B.F. Skinner, which is operant conditioning. So, si Skinner kasi, diba, I have discussed this na in our past module, yung operant conditioning ni Skinner na mayroong reinforcement and punishment where a child can do a specific task kung depending on the reinforcement na makukuha niya. Kung positive yung reinforcement, ang tendency, the child will do it all over again. Kasi maganda yung reinforcement nito. Pero kapag nagkakaroon ng hindi magandang gawain yung child, ang tendency is nagkakaroon siya ng punishment na binibigay ng parents. Kaya ang kalalabasan nun, hindi nagagawin ulit ng bata yung bagay na yun or yung activity na yun na magkakaroon siya in the end ng punishment. So, according to B.F. Skinner then, in operant conditioning, a learner's behavior becomes either more or less probable depending on the consequences it produces. So, reinforcers are consequences that increase the probability that a response will occur in the future. So, sa punishment naman, punishers on the other hand are consequences that suppress a response and decrease the likelihood that it will occur in the future. So, yun nga sabi ko sa inyo kanina, if the reinforcement is positive, ang tendency is gagawin niya ito ng paulit-ulit hanggang sa paglaki na niya. Kasi naitatak na sa isip niya na maganda yung outcome nung ginawa niyang yun. But if the outcome will be punishment, ang tendency is hindi na niya ito gagawin sa mga susunod na araw or as the child grows older. Kasi alam niya na kapag ginawa niya yung mga bagay na yun is magkakaroon siya ng punishment na syempre ibibigay din ng parents or the caregiver that yung caregiver na tumitingin doon sa bata. So, not only the parents who can give the reinforcement or the punishment, but also the person that surrounds the children. So, pwedeng sa relative, pwedeng sa mga teacher niya ito makuha, basta doon sa mga persons na malapit sa bata. Okay, so next is Bandura's Social Learning Theory. So, Albert Bandura's social learning theory claims that humans are cognitive beings whose active processing of information from the environment plays a major role in learning in human development. So, Bandura argues that a human learning is very different from rat learning because humans have more sophisticated cognitive capabilities. So, Bandura agrees with Skinner that operant conditioning is an important type of learning, but he notes that humans think about the connections between their behavior and its consequences, anticipate what consequence likely to follow from their future behavior, and often are more affected by what they believe will happen than by the consequence they actually encounter. So, in Bandura's social learning theory class, it is combination of observational learning and reciprocal determinism. Although Bandura's believe in B.F. Skinner theory, meron pa rin siyang additional na information regarding operant conditioning. Yes, Bandura believes that reinforcement and punishment has a great impact in one's personal development. Pero, Albert Bandura kasi believed that it has something to do with the cognitive development din. Parang yung connections between the task, between the activity, at yung outcome ng gagawin ng child has something to do with the cognitive development. So, for example, a hardship and few immediate rewards. For example, a woman may continue to pursue a medical degree despite many punishing hardship and few immediate reward because she anticipates a greater reward when she completes her studies. So, yun. Ang tawag nito, doon kay Skinner kasi, nakadepende yung pagtuloy ng activity niya in the future kung maganda yung outcome nito. But in Bandura's social learning, he believed that even the outcome is negative, if the person pursue what he dreamed for, or kung yung bata is gusto niya talagang gawin yung activity, even though punishment yung kalalabasan nun is itutuloy niya pa rin. Kasi nga naniniwala siya na in the future may yung punishment na binibigay sa kanya is mapapalitan ng positive reinforcement. Parang, wala siyang nakukuhang reward dahil sa tingin ng mga tao sa paligid niya is hindi maganda yung ginagawa niya. But at the end of the day, as the child grows older, kapag na kita nila na maganda naman pala yung effect nito sa sarili niya mismo, nagkakaroon ng greater rewards pagdating ng araw. So that explains why he believed in B.F. Skinner operant conditioning, but with a twist kasi naka-incline doon yung cognitive development. So, like Watson and Skinner, though Bandura is skeptical of the idea of universal stage of human development, he maintains that development is context-specific and can proceed along many different paths. So it is also continuous, occurring gradually through a lifetime of learning. Bandura does not acknowledge that children's cognitive learning capabilities mature over childhood. So they can remember more about what they have seen and can imitate a greater variety of novel behaviors. Yet, he also believes that children of the same age will not be much alike at all if their learning experience has differed. Okay, so next will be the contextual theories and social and emotional development. So this is one theory lang class. It's all about Brenner's ecological approach to development. So this is just a review class anyway. I have discussed this ecological theory ni Bronfenbrenner na sa mga naunang modules po natin. I think I have discussed this one during prelim modules, if I'm not mistaken po. So Bronfenbrenner's models, also known as the bioecological system, theory presents child development within the context of relationship systems that comprise the child developments. So it describes multi-part layers of environment that has an effect on the development of the child. So each layer is further made up of different structures. The term bioecological points out that a child's own biological makeup impacts as a key factor in one's development. So class, let's go first for the layer ng microsystem. So as we all know, the microsystem is the layer nearest the child. So doon sa center class, if you remember the chart or yung table na nilagay ko doon sa discussion po natin before is nakalagay doon yung chart within yung child ay nasa gitna, tapos meron siyang layer in ang tawag nito, around the child. So, first na layer na malapit sa kanya is what we call the microsystem. So, the microsystem is the layer nearest the child. It comprises structures which the child directly interacts with. So, ito yung mga direct na connection or interaction with the child, such as um, his or her immediate environment. So, in this layer, relationship effects happens in two directions, both away from the child and toward the child. So, this means that the child is affected by people with whom he interacts, and in turn, these people are also affected by the child. So, yes, it is very true, class. Yung affection of the child doon sa mga people that surrounds him or her really had a big effect doon sa growing ng child. Ganon din, vice versa, meron din namang effect yung si child doon sa mga nag-aalaga or yun, particularly nag-aalaga sa kanya. Kasi syempre, yun yung mga pinakamalapit na tao sa kanya, yung mga caregiver na nasa surroundings po niya. So, meron ding impact yun sa kanila. Hindi lang yung mga not only the people that surrounds the children, but children has also has also a anong tawag na nun? Merong impact din in the people around the child. So, for example, class, a mother's deep affection for her child moves her to answer to the baby's needs and keep the baby safe. So, in turn, the baby's smiles and coos bring the mother feelings of warmth and affirmation that indeed she is a good mother. So, the child is affected by the behavior and beliefs of the parents. However, the child also affects the behavior and beliefs of the parent. So, Bronfenbrenner calls this bidirectional influences, and he shows how they occur among all levels of environment. So, this is quite similar to what Ericsson termed as mutuality in his psychosocial theory. So, parang si microsystem class is give and take lang with the child and with the people that surrounds him. Yung mga immediate lang or yung ang tawag na nito, immediate environment nung bata. Okay, so next is the Meso System. So, si Meso System naman, this is the layer serves as the connection between the structures of the child microsystem. So, ito yung pangalawang layer na malapit din doon sa child. So, for example, class, the Meso System will include the link of interaction between the parents and teachers, or the parent and health services, or the community and the church. So, yun yung mga places na malapit doon sa child which the child can go outside. Kapag nasa labas po siya ng bahay, yung interaction niya doon sa school, doon sa church, doon sa community, doon sa even in the health services have a very strong din na implication doon sa development ng bata. And then next is the exosystem. So this layer refers to the bigger social system in which the child does not function directly. So unlike microsystem and mesosystem class, sa exosystem is medyo malayo na. Malayo na siya doon sa center which the child is in there. So this includes the city government, the workplace, and the mass media. So kapag kabata pa lang po kasi, ang isang tao, syempre, hindi pa niya masyadong alam yung sa part ng government, sa municipality kung saan siya kabilang, sa mga iba't ibang workplace, and even mass media. Parang ang nasa isip pa lang kasi ng isang bata, as usual, is yung mga palagi niyang ginagawa. So, yun kasama na doon yung paglalaro, yung pagpunta sa school, kasi syempre school, bahay pa lang ng mga yan, at saka yung mga kilala niyang mga tao is yung mga palagi din niyang nakikita sa surroundings niya. So, doon sa mga government natin, doon sa mga mass media natin, hindi pa sila masyadong na-develop dyan na para malaman at their early ages kung ano yung nangyayari sa paligid nila, especially doon sa community where they belong. So, as the child grows, yun, magiging aware na siya in the government that we have and also in the community that he or she belongs to. Kaya medyo malayo na si exosystem kasi si child pa lang ang pinag-uusapan natin po doon, which is nakalocate doon sa center. So, the structures in this layer may influence the child's development by somehow affecting some structures in the child's microsystem. So, we see a change in the child's routine when, for example, the mother works in a call center. So, that was seen in that burger chain commercial where the mom and the children meet up at the fast food for breakfast just before the children go to school and the mom going home from work in a call center. So, the child may not interact directly with what is in the ecosystem, but he is likely feel the positive or negative impact this system creates as it interacts with the child's own system. So, yun din ang problema dito sa ecosystem class kapag sa part ng workplace ng mga parents. Let's say, for example, late umuwi ang mga parents. So, kapag umuwi na ang parents, yun yung time na patulog na din yung mga bata. So, kapag ganun class, yung relationship between the children and the parents have a effect doon sa pag-uwi nila ng late. Kasi syempre, malilesen na yung family bonding nila, hindi na nila makakasabay sa pagkain yung mga anak. At the same time, hindi makakasabay ng mga anak yung parents nila. It has a great impact on their development then also. Kaya kahit nasabihin nating malayo ito, pero kapag ka ang involved, malayo ito sa layer ng child na nasa center, pero kapag ka ang involved is yung parents nila, yung workplace ng parents nila, yun, makikita din natin na yung development ng mga bata is magkakaroon ng changes. So, changes might as well in their emotional status. Kasi emotional yung pinag-uusapan natin dito, class. Kaya yung emotional development nila dito, kapag ganun palagi yung nangyayari, yung attachment nila sa parents, medyo malayo. So, ang tendency, nagkakaroon sila ng mas deep na attachment kung sino man yung nag-aalaga sa kanila. So, it is really important that we spend time with our family, mas lalo na doon sa mga parents, sa mga magulang na medyo nalilesen yung time nila to interact or to have enough time with their children. It has a big impact on the emotional development of the child. So, as much as we can, as a parent, as you, as a future parent na din, we must take or we make time for our children. Next is the Chrono System. No pala, the Microsystem pala. So for the Microsystem, so this layer is found in the outermost part in the child's environment. So ito na kasi yung malayo na talaga sa center kung nasaan yung child. So the Microsystem includes the cultural values, customs, and laws. So the belief system contained in one's Microsystem permits all the interactions in the other layers and reaches the individual. So for example, in Western countries like the US, most of the young people are expected to be more independent. By the time young people are expected to be more independent, by the time, nalito ako. So by the time, by the time they end their teenage years pala, while in Asian countries like ours, parents are expected to support or at least want to support their children for a longer period of time. So it is not uncommon to see even married children still living with their parents. So in China then, and also in other parts of the world, sons are more valuable than daughters. So si Macrosystem class, ito na yung pinakamalayong layer ng um, pinakamalayong layer found in the chart that I have given you in the previous module. Kasi yung mga tawag na nito, yung mga kasama dito is yung mga cultural values, yung customs and laws. So ito na yung part ng ito na yung pagiging independent ng child or dependent or independent ng child doon sa parents nila. So, for example, it is stated here in the countries like US. So, when they reach, by the end of their teenage years na, ang nangyayari doon is nagiging independent na sila. So, they are no longer taking support from their parents when they reach or kapag katapos na yung teenage life nila. So, sabihin na natin 18 or 19. So, yun yung legal age na nila doon to take care of themselves. So, parents are no longer, parents are no longer required to support them. Doon sa US yun, class. Pero dito sa atin sa Pilipinas, hindi. Sa Asian countries, like Philippines, we have different cultures. Kasi even we are 20s, we are 30s, kung gusto mong kasama pa rin ang parents mo, pwede. Kung gusto mong maging dependent pa rin sa parents mo, pwede. Kung gusto ka nilang isupport hanggang kahit na may family ka na, kahit na may anak ka na, kahit may, kahit naka malayo or nakabukod, ganun, meron pa rin. Yung attachment mo sa parents is hindi nawawala. So, if they are willing to help, they will lend you a arm or a helping hand. Kung ganun din, vice versa, kung gusto mong tulungan yung parents mo, pwede. So, like unlike in other countries, like in US nga, is nagiging independent yung children doon pagdating ng, pagkatapos ng teenage life nila. Pero dito sa Pilipinas kasi nasa tradition, hindi lang tradition, kundi nasa anong tawag na kasi doon? Nakalimutan ko na. Yung sa values, okay, kasama yun sa values po natin, sa Filipino values po natin, yung strong family ties. Yung hindi natin maiwan yung family natin kahit na kahit na anong mangyari, 'di ba? Filipinos are known to have their strong family ties kahit na anong mangyari, kahit na may sala, ganun, or kahit na merong itinakwil ng mga parents, pero at the end of the day, kung babalik yung mga anak nila na umalis, tinatanggap pa rin. Kasi ganun po tayong mga Filipino, we have a strong family ties, which is good din, which is maganda. Kasi alam mo sa sarili mo na pagdating ng araw is meron ka pa ring babalikang pamilya. So, yun din yung maganda, class, as a Filipino values po natin. Pero there are some advantages and disadvantage. Pero we are no longer discussing it na kasi syempre malayo na po siya sa topic. But those are the examples regarding macrosystem. Kaya nasa malayo na siya. Malayong layer na siya doon sa child na nasa center. Kasi nga, yung mga ganitong bagay is nare-reach na lang niya kapag ka totally na-develop na siya as a person. So, syempre, ito yung mga nasa edad na 20 pataas. Kaya yung microsystem natin is, yun na yung nasa malayong layer. And last, let me add this one pala yung sa Chrono System. Although, hindi siya kasama doon kasi hindi pa ata to na totally na-develop or na papatunay. I am not sure kung hindi pa siya truly developed by Bronfriend Benner. Pero in some other books, meron ng pang 5 na layer. So this 5th layer is what we call the Chrono System. So it covers the element of time as it relates to a child environments. So this involves patterns of stability and change in the child's life. So this involves whether the child's day is characterized by an orderly, predictable pattern, or whether the child is subjected to sudden changes in routine. So we can also look into the pace of the child's everyday life. It is a hurried or relaxed pace. This system can affect or influence the child externally, like the timing of other siblings coming or the timing of parental separation or even death. So, si Chrono System class, it involves the element of time. So, time ang pinag-uusapan dito. So, yung it may have a external and internal effect like in the bodily changes that occur within the developing child. So, syempre, as the child gets older, meron ding pagbabago sa physical, sa external, and then sa internal development din niya. Hindi lang nagbabago sa physical, ganun din sa emotional, and then sa social development ng child. So, marirealize niya ito as the child grows older. Parang yung mga ginagawa niya noon is hindi na niya pwedeng gawin habang siya ay lumalaki kasi nga, there are some changes na rin that can happen physically and emotionally doon sa pangangatawan niya, and then doon sa tawag na nito, physical aspect ng physical and internal aspect pala ng kanyang buhay. So that concludes the ecological approach ni Yuri Bronfenbrenner. So we have four lang po. 4 lang yung stated na layers in your module. Pero sabi ko nga sa inyo, in some other books, there is 5th layer, which is Chrono System. Okay, so class, that will be the end of our discussion for today. So I hope you have a lot of information to take in. So thank you for listening. Let me leave you with these quotations. The ego is not master in its own house. According to Sigmund Freud, healthy children will not fear life if their elders have integrity enough not to fear death. According to Ericsson, children need people in order to become human. That's according to Yuri Bronfenbrenner. So again, class, thank you for listening and have a great day. Have a great day ahead. See you again on our next video recorded discussions. Have a great day.